In today's show, we talk all things Donovan Clingan, his day one fit, and whether he can really play next to Deandre Ayton. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking Donovan Clingan, the Blazers' new big rookie, the number 7 pick in the 2024 NBA draft. I want to talk about his immediate day one fit as a rookie in the league. I want to talk about his fit with Deandre Ayton and what that means for DA's future. And also, there is a lot of scuttlebutt in the sort of Blazers fan world, and it was addressed by Chauncey Billups, Joe Cronin at Donovan Clingan's introductory press conference about the reality of trying Donovan Clingan and Deandre Ayton together in a 2 towers, 1 center court lineup of everyone's dreams. We'll talk about all of that in today's show. I'm going to spend some time talking about, the league going bigger and all of those things. The Blazers certainly got bigger with Donovan Clingan. I don't think the league's maybe going bigger overall. Size has always been incredibly valuable. What's changed in the modern NBA is that size plus skill is incredibly valuable. It's like you just would need more dribble, pass, and shoot guys who are 6'8". Size has always been a premium since the league has existed. It's just changed in what ways we put a premium on very tall people to be skilled. But Donovan Clingan is huge, north of 7'1", barefoot, 280 pounds. I think on a show last week on draft night, I called him 240 a couple times. 280. He's huge, right? Weighed over 280 pounds at the draft combine. He's a giant person. He's going to wear number 23, flip-flopping his college number from 32, because 32, of course, is retired. Belonged to Bill Walton, the man right over my right shoulder. Had to check and make sure he was still there. He is what Chauncey Billups called the best rim protector in the draft. Probably, depending on what Alex Sarr becomes, and I think Sarr's defense might be in a different spot, but certainly one of the best defensive bigs in his draft class, taken number 7 overall. I mentioned when he got drafted that I think the drafting a center at 7 with Deandre Ayton, after 1 year with the team, heading into this season and next on his deals, that it would be very curious if the Blazers were to offer Deandre Ayton like a contract extension. It'd be very curious if they were to sign him to a big fat multi-year deal after this, and that the addition of Clingan probably means the long-term marriage between Deandre Ayton and the Blazers is not particularly likely. But that's a ways away from that decision being made. They're not going to make it this year. It would be probably irresponsible to kind of clear the decks for Donovan Clingan to play, someone who didn't even play that much in college, to play a ton of minutes in the NBA. The Blazers are pretty crowded at center if Robert Williams is healthy and able to play a bunch this season. But if not, then they'll have 3 centers, which is a totally reasonable number, reasonable and correct number, and maybe some others depending on what they do with the 2-way spots. But even if the drafting of Donovan Clingan means the sort of overall long-term couple years down the line that Deandre Ayton is not going to be, back on a big money contract to play for the Portland Trailblazers, the night one fit is that Donovan Clingan is a backup center, right? That part is really simple. Don't overthink it, right? Don't overthink it. Deandre Ayton is not an old person. He's 25, turning 26. He was pretty good the last couple months of the season after a very rocky beginning in Portland, but he kind of found his stride and figured out some ways to be more impactful. And I think Clingan, just in terms of organizational investment, is going to easily leapfrog Duop Reith. Reith is a really interesting, fun guy to root for, but like he's not a very good defensive player, and he's not good enough on offense to offset that. And he's also like a 28-year-old second-year player making $2 million. He wasn't the 7th pick in the draft. There are going to be nights when it's really useful to have Duop Reith. His skill set is unique and valuable on the roster, but I think Clingan, just by virtue of the amount of investment that they've put into him by drafting him in the lottery, it leapfrogs Duop Reith. The other complication here is Rob Williams. I am sort of going to move forward in the rest of this episode, assuming that Rob Williams, like, I don't know what his health is going to be like. I know there's been some speculation that he'll be ready for training camp, but I will say that at his exit interview, he was very cautious about putting a timeline on it. And the Blazers could obviously trade him. He seems like the most of the bigs, like the most obvious trade chip. But I think like he's a trade candidate, and there's health concerns about him just in terms of like general like high level, big minute availability. So let's move forward in this discussion with the assumption that Rob Williams is probably not part of like a long-term plan, like a full season plan for the Blazers, one way or another, whatever that might mean for him. So Clingan, if Rob Williams is healthy and good to go, I do think that that confuses things, but that's not a conversation for early July. That's a conversation that we'll have in the fall. I promise, I do this every day. We'll talk about it in the fall if Rob Williams is still on the roster. So Clingan is going to play something like 18 to 20 minutes a night. Deandre Ayton played between, depending on kind of, he started to play more at the end of the season, but like 32 to 34 minutes, typical starter minutes in that 32-minute range. So there's like 16 plus minutes for Clingan, just naturally in the lineup. Plus, if they do play any minutes together, say they play, like 3 minutes a game, a very small sample against the right lineup a game, and he's playing like 20-ish minutes a night. And if he has it rolling, he plays a little bit longer, et cetera, right? Like, so like 18 to 20, 17 to 20 a night, I think is a pretty reasonable guess for what Clingan's night one role looks like. That's fine. That's fine. He played 13 minutes a game as a freshman, at UConn. He was behind Adama Sanogo, and he was not nearly as good as him. He was a really intriguing backup center, and they were gigantic. And they won the national championship, and Clingan was like, wow, I can't believe they have someone that big and that skilled behind, that talented behind him. But even in year two, when he was the clear-cut starter, Samson Johnson was playing a bunch of minutes, and Clingan only played 22 and a half minutes a game as a sophomore. Like, he was not a big-minute college basketball player. So expecting him to translate to be like a 30-minute-a-night NBA guy in year one it doesn't make sense. I think foul trouble is going to be an issue for him. Foul trouble is usually an issue for every rookie, and particularly bigs. Is he going to be able to be on the court enough to play 30 minutes? You'd hope so. You hope he figures it out, unless it's like really effective in that way. But like, it would be very normal if he just like was about capable of playing at the most half the game, and most nights he played less than that. So I think that's a very, very normal role. And I'll say this: Clingan was introduced on Saturday at the Blazers practice facility in his introductory press conference, and he says the right things. He's about winning. He's won 2 high school championships and won 2 college championships. He's won a lot in his last 4 years of playing basketball. He says the right things. He's about winning. That's what he cares about. And his role is to help the team win, and he'll do those things. And when asked about Jason Quick, why he loves defense, or sort of where his appreciation for defense, he said his mom helped him grow an appreciation for defense. His mother passed away in 2018, and Clingan has spoken openly many times in the media about what an inspiration sort of his mother's memory has been to him in his basketball journey. She herself was a very good basketball player. He says the right things. He's easy to root for. This is a dude you could like, but he is on day one a backup center for now. I think that is a very reasonable, responsible, probably the correct role for him, is that you don't throw him into a big minute role where he's going to struggle. You kind of narrow his ask, keep him in a silo, and say, if you do these things, you'll stack the grain and get to the top, but kind of keep it relatively simple for a young guy. And we worry so much about what young players and NBA players in general, what they can't do. The best thing for development is to figure out what you do really well and do that, and then add parts to that. But figure out what you do really well. And in theory, Donovan Clingan, what he's going to really do well is be gigantic and protect the rim. And I think he has a chance to be, I believe eventually he'll be just like a straight up good defender in the NBA. It would be interesting to see how quickly he can get to being a passable defender in the NBA. But there's a world in which being 7'2", 280 and having some good basketball instincts helps you kind of accelerate the learning curve for one specific thing. It's playing defense. I think he can get there quickly, relatively quickly. And obviously on a team as talented as the Blazers, it's like we're grading on a curve. But when Joe Cronin drafted Donovan Clingan, he knew that this wasn't, he knew what you and I knew, right? So when I said on the show, like that night of the draft, it's like, that doesn't seem like it's a long-term, doesn't seem like that is a long-term commitment to Deandre Ayton. Seems like the clock is ticking. And I still believe that, 100%. I still believe that. It hasn't changed in a few days. And Cronin knew that too. So he called Deandre Ayton, who's warming up for the Olympic season, a tune-up, an Olympic qualifying tune-up before they go to Spain in next week, or maybe the week, next week, to see if the Bahamas can qualify for the Olympics. Chauncey Billups, according to Jason Quick, is headed to Spain. He's going to watch DA in those qualifiers. I believe they played even this week. I said next week. This week, as this coming Tuesday is when it starts. So DA's on the phone and he says, "Yeah, I'm into it. I'm excited. I want to find out what Donovan Clingan can do to help me, what I can do to help him, and how we can both help the team together." Like I said, the simplest thing is that you split them up. DeAndre Ayton plays 32 minutes. You get 16 minutes from Donovan Clingan, and that's what you do each night, and that's the plan. And as guys grow, you make decisions from there, but that's like the simplest plan. But the Blazers are going to play these dudes together. At least a little bit, they're going to experiment with it. And I think not only am I in favor of it, I think they have to. Let's talk about why they have to and what it's going to look like in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And just because sports slow down a little bit in the summertime, we got WNBA action today. We got MLB games today. My beloved Rockies won a baseball game in 13 innings. But even with a slightly less full day of sports, FanDuel is still making it worth your while each and every day all summer long. Because they're hooking up all customers, not new customers, old customers, seasoned vets to the FanDuel world. Anybody who messes around with FanDuel, all customers, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. That's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So it's going to happen. DeAndre Ayton and Donovan Clingan are going to play together. How much they play together, I think, will be largely determined by its overall quality impact. But I mentioned this last year heading into the season, that when it was pretty clear that the Blazers were going to at least experiment a little bit, but not a lot, but a little bit with the Rob Williams and DeAndre Ayton pairing, is that do it. Why would you not do it? This is incredibly important to this sort of like where the Blazers are, if nothing else. Like if you obviously they're probably not going to be a particularly good basketball team next year. Although I think they're just like today, they're probably better than they were than when they were last season. If you just replace Donovan, like Moses Brown's minutes with Donovan Clingan, and Denny Avdia, I think is going to help a lot. Like if you just like start today, they're probably better, right? Probably better, but like not meaningfully better. And if you're not meaningfully better, if you're still one of the bad teams in the league, why not be a place, an incubator program, a place to experiment, a place to find out what you are, and maybe not even what you are, but like what you could be. Like truly experiment with things, because you've created this lane for yourselves to like truly mess around. So do I think Donovan Clingan and DeAndre Ayton can be like the long-term starters on this team? Hell no. No, they can't start next to each other. I don't even think they could play big minutes next to each other in most NBA games because too many teams have put 4 ball handlers out on the court, and that's going to be a problem. But they should absolutely give it a shot. And by a shot, I mean, like, commit to it for, in the right matchups, commit to it pretty heavily. Say, okay, let's see if this works. We're playing Minnesota, we're playing Cleveland. Obviously, the rosters can change, but we're playing teams that go big, and play with 2 sort of more traditional bigs, particularly Minnesota. It's like, let's try it. What if we did this for 17 minutes tonight? Like, what if they did share the court for like big chunks of the second and third quarters? Give it a shot. Like, try it. I think it's incredibly important. However, I'm pretty skeptical of it being effective. That's not why I'm not like, I'm in favor of trying it because I think finding out you're wrong about stuff is the interesting part of basketball. And like having the freedom to experiment without the pressure to win games is like, gives you more and more reason to try things that even you might not think they work, but let's see what they do. Maybe we can learn something else or figure out these other things. Why I'm skeptical of the pairing working, right? Like, I think the night one, just like split their minutes, have them not play together. It's the modern NBA. It's pace and space. Like, and I think it's like the reason that you would like theoretically do it, right? And I think the reason that folks talk about the 2 big lineups is because of defense. You're going to play defense. And to be clear, like, being big is very valuable. It's still in the league. Stopping teams from making layups, like defending the rim, is still the most valuable thing you can do. You can't really prevent teams from shooting threes. You can kind of take away certain types of threes. You can do a better job of taking away corner threes or catch and shoot threes, like, limit some catch and shoot threes, not all of them, but some, right? But like, you can maybe take a team maybe usually takes 35. You can probably hold them to 28, right? And that's, and maybe not always depending on the type of shooters they have, right? But the thing you can do, like schematically do, is shut down the rim, right? You could shut down the rim. So like being big seems to help that. But I am in general skeptical of a 2-center pairing on defense because just the mobility of Ayton and Clingan together seems dicey. It really does. And I'll give some sort of other examples later in the show, but like, Clingan's not mobile. He's big and he has like a fast brain. Like he clearly can like process defense quickly, but his feet don't move that fast. In fact, early in the season, when I watched UConn in one of those early season tournaments and also against, and they played Carolina early in the year as well, it's like, I thought Clingan was really big, but I thought he was slow. Like, and he was coming back from injury, and maybe that's like a fitness and an injury thing. And it's like, if he can stay healthy and continue to get his fitness up, maybe he can continue to like get in shape and be able to move laterally for long stretches. But like, maybe some really big guys like him are going to be slow. That's life. And he's probably he's got a good processing speed, but he's just never going to be hyper mobile. And DA's pretty mobile for a 7-footer, but he's not mobile for like an NBA player, right? Like, he's not mobile for, like, relative to the mean. He's just mobile for like someone his size. Like, he does have pretty good lateral mobility for someone his size, but he's not this like chase around screens crazy versatile defender. Like, he's a drop big also. So if you're playing them 2 together, I'm worried about the mobility in the half court, and the other thing I think is like the big one that maybe people don't always circle is like, transition defense is tough with 2 guys of that top speed. Like, DA can run, but he's not a flyer, and Clingan is not fast. And it's just like, if the other team's knows that you're big and they're gonna run, like, you are going to give up transition points, and then you're going to scramble in transition and get in bad matchups. And like, the whole thing about being big would be like to get in the right matchups and match up and use your size because it works against a certain team. And when teams run, they can kind of blow that up. So I'm worried about mobility in the half court and transition defense. And like, this is a different thing, and it's not a perfect comparison, but in the very, very, very limited minutes that we saw the Blazers try 2 big lineups with both Duop Reith and Rob Williams, they got shredded. Now, there's like two-man pairings, like lineup data is already kind of busy and like noisy in and of itself. It's maybe not the most useful data, but like, 2-man pairings is even noisier. It's just like it's so susceptible because there's a small sample size and just the randomness of it. Like, it's so susceptible to like, dude made a shot. oh, we look like we're bad on defense now. Dude misses a shot. Hey, we're a pretty good defensive team in the way that I think Kevin Pelton from ESPN had a thing about how it's about 500 minutes together as a 5-man unit for it to start to get a little bit less noisy. So it's just you're never going to get there with these groups. That said, the advanced stats behind Reith and Rob Williams sharing two big lineups with Ayton were awful. And just your eyeballs, particularly with Reith, your eyeballs nope, that doesn't work. Clingan is different than Duop Reith defensively, just a totally different player. He's just way bigger. He's going to protect the rim a lot better. He's the verticality. Reith is slower and smaller, and his values on offense, and Clingan is bigger and larger, and his values on defense is just different. And Rob Williams played so few games that it's not super meaningful. But I watched it and it got shredded. Absolutely, absolutely shredded. I'm worried on defense, but I'm in favor of trying it. On offense, though, my skepticism is that it starts with the shooting, the obvious thing. It starts with the spacing. These dudes aren't exactly spacers. They're not exactly dudes who are known for stretching it out. Let's talk a little bit about that in the second segment, because there is this belief and optimism that Donovan Clingan's going to become a shooter. And if you remember this show, if you're an everydayer, there was some belief and optimism from this very podcaster that Deandre Ayton maybe was going to become a shooter last fall. Well, that didn't exactly happen. Let's talk about the big guys in shooting and my other concerns about where this fits on offense. And then I want to offer some examples of two big lineups across the NBA, and one that I think the Blazers can maybe try to emulate. One that I think is actually attainable, like a goal for them to try to push towards. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. As I mentioned, the number one concern with sort of the offensive pairing, sharing the court with Ayton and Clingan. Again, I don't think they're going to do this a bunch, but I think people are curious enough about it that I want to dive deep in here. It's sort of a topic that's been on my mind. I think it's on the mind of a bunch of listeners. I don't think they're going to play a ton together, and Chauncey Billups has said as much. But one of the reasons I'm concerned about their offense is the main reason I'm concerned about their offense, I think, is it starts with shooting. Certainly, it's one of my concerns. It starts with shooting. It's not the only thing, but it starts with shooting. Clingan took 9 threes in college. In 2 years, he took 9 threes. 1 his freshman year, 8 his sophomore season. There's some optimism about his shooting development. But Chauncey Billups mentioned that when he came to work out for the Blazers, and the Blazers have released the highlight tape of his private workout with the Blazers. When Billups said he came and worked out, it's like he was getting shots up and they looked clean and easy. He looked like someone who could shoot threes with relative ease. Sure. And I think Jonathan Givony of ESPN has mentioned that in a couple places, that teams, and I think count the Blazers among teams, maybe it's team without the S, teams had some faith that Clingan could develop into a 3-point shooter. Sure. He might. He also shot 55.8% from the free throw line in college. 58% from his sophomore season. Let's round up. Let's only count his sophomore season. He shot 58% from the free throw line his sophomore season. Does that scream to you someone who's an elite jump shooter, or even like a elite shooting touch period? I think there's an eventuality where Donovan Clingan shoots threes. I don't, like I said earlier in the show, I don't want him to worry about what he can't do. I want it to be narrow, in a silo. Build up what you do. Don't try to spread with that lateral expansion, right? There's no need for the horizontal integration of your skills. Just do what you do well. Is there an eventuality where I think Clingan could be like a standstill good 3-point shooter? Sure. Right? Scouting people are probably better at understanding what guys can grow into, and Givony is really good at this. I'm not going to, and Billups obviously knows ball. But I'm a little skeptical. Eventually he can get there, but is he going to do it in the first 2 seasons? The 2 years that he's at this point guaranteed to play next to DeAndre Ayton? Is he going to be a meaningful NBA shooter in years 1 or 2 in the NBA? No, come on. No, because it's not just shooting them and making them. It's putting up enough volume that they worry about it, and it's putting up with enough volume and enough speed that they actually guard you. Nurk started to shoot threes, and he started to make threes, but they never cared about it. No one cared about it. It was a really slow release, and the teams just said, okay, shoot it. shoot it. Great. Like we will live with that. If that's the thing we're going to give away, that we're happy to live with it. You're not getting offensive rebounds. We're running the other way. They were fine with it. Even when Nurk was shooting pretty well, the volume matters. The accuracy matters, but the volume is really, really, really important for 3-point shooters. If you're going to take 1.5 a game, no one's going to worry. Deandre Ayton's taken 93s in 6 seasons across 358 games. And this doofus right here talking in the microphone, or if you're not watching on YouTube, this doofus in your ear right now, or I guess if you're in your car, that's still your ear. That's how you listen to stuff. That's how we all hear things. This doofus that you hear right now, I thought it was like Deandre Ayton. I think he can shoot threes this year. He's gonna have a chance to expand his range. He's carte blanche to do whatever he wants on a totally open-ended roster with no rules and all these things. And he didn't take a three for his first 40 appearances in a Trailblazers uniform. 40 games. That's half the year. 40 games. He took one in game 41. 40 games. He's taken 93s in 358 NBA appearances. He took 10 all of last season. He is not going to be someone who shoots threes. He's just not going to. If he didn't do it last year, DeAndre Ayton's going to take 6 threes a game next season? What DeAndre Ayton does, he does pretty damn well. He shoots between 4 feet and 20 feet, and he's really like, by some measurements, one of the great mid-range shooters in the history of the NBA. He's excellent at it, right? But he's not going to shoot threes. So that alone makes the Clingan and DeAndre pairing tough, because it's not necessarily them. Like, I think you can put Clingan on the court with DeAndre Ayton, and DeAndre Ayton can get 17 footers and hit him. Like, I don't think Ayton's offense would be that big of a problem with Clingan on the court. It's everybody else. It's the slashers. It's Denny Avdia slashing. It's Shaedon Sharpe slashing. It's Ant and Scoot, depending on who's on the roster. But like, it's clogging the middle for all of the drivers, and then you don't have anything except for DeAndre Ayton 17-footers because you don't have the space to get into the paint. Like, that's the value of the 3-point revolution, is that you're leveraging spacing to make layups. Like, that's what's changed, is how we leverage making layups. That's actually the revolution that's happened over the last 10 years or so. And with 2 bigs that don't really shoot, that seems hard. Can DA still get his stuff? Yeah, of course. It's just, it was already a slog on offense last year. They're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. I think they were worst. They were the worst 3-point shooting team in the league, unless you go by cleaning the glass, and then they climbed all the way to 28th in the non-garbage time. So like, one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league, right? They're just, it's just, they need a little more space to make it easier for their young guards who want to get to the rim. And for Shaedon Sharpe, who wants to take a bunch of pull-up middies. If the whole paint is clogged with 2 bigs, it's going to be tough. I don't think it's only shooting, though, why I'm concerned. I think the lack of dribbling matters. The lack of, like, neither Clingan or DA is like an off-the-dribble guy, and particularly DA. This was back in March of this year. I had an episode on this very podcast. And if you're a new listener, what's up? I'm so happy to have you. If you're a Denny fan who is just converting to listen to Locked On Blazers, I'm so excited to have y'all. Let's do it. This is what we do here. We dive deep. But like, back in March, I had episodes like, what skill would I add to some players in the roster? And the one I chose was DeAndre Ayton as a show and go skill. And the person I gave an example of was Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think Jaren Jackson does a really good job of, like, hard pump fake, show you that pump fake, hard pump fake, and then big stride dribble to the rim. He doesn't have a great handle, but he's really good at leveraging his ability to shoot to get to the rim. DA doesn't do that. If you look at the numbers, when he dribbles like more than 3 times, it's a nightmare. He's a no dribble guy. He's a play finisher. He's a no dribble guy. What he does really well, but he hasn't showed much aptitude to expand his game. And like, this is year 7 in the NBA. It's like, you at some point you kind of just like do what you do, and you got to figure out how it's on the team to say, this is what he does. How can we improve it? I think the lack of ball handling is a problem, and I think DA's he's also not much of a passer. Clingan can pass for sure, but like, is he the high level enough playmaker to unlock 2 big lineups? I don't know. There are some teams that play big. When Chauncey Billups was asked about it, he said, I'm not going to do this against every team. I'm not going to have freaking DeAndre Ayton guarding Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant, like, super crazy mobile forwards. Yeah, like OKC having them guard like J-Dub, right? When they go 5 outs, it's not going to work. And Billups won't do that. It's going to be lineup specific. Teams you mentioned were Cleveland, Denver, and Memphis. I don't know. Denver doesn't do this. I don't understand where. Denver has Nikola Jokic for sure, but they don't play big. Their other big is Aaron Gordon. I guess he doesn't shoot, but like, I think you could maybe get away with it, but I wouldn't recommend it because they cut and space and cut and space. Seems like it would be a nightmare. But Cleveland is a good example. They play with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. They kind of, through injury this year, clearly were better when they only had one of those dudes on the court and they could play with one traditional center and more space for Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland to attack, particularly Mitchell. Pace and space. How do you leverage layups? Memphis, like, they've done it with Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr. And part of the big, the reason why it works is because Steven Adams can pass and Jaren Jackson Jr. is very comfortable as a spot up shooting 3-point, big man. And also Memphis has one of the worst half court offenses in the league. It works in a specific way on the other end on defense. And like the big one that Billups didn't mention was Minnesota. Minnesota is the name you're thinking of when you're thinking about this. Why I don't think you can duplicate Minnesota is because Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players in the history of the NBA. Obviously, he has had some well-publicized, I would say poorly covered, but well-publicized struggles in the playoffs, and sometimes teams have been able to spread him out and take advantage of him. Some of that, I think, was some scheme and personnel stuff in Utah, and this year, it's like, oh man, Rudy Gobert couldn't guard Luka Doncic in space. Okay. He was great in the playoffs. Rudy Gobert was great in the playoffs. He was very, very, very good. I think he's fine. I don't think you could duplicate that. Maybe Clingan becomes that one day. 4-time defensive player of the year. Okay. Maybe that's a little rich, but maybe he becomes a very, very impactful defensive player. It's just kind of what I'm saying. He's not going to be that in year 1. He's not going to be that in year 2. Eventually he could get there. And the reason that it works for Minnesota is because Cat's unique skill set. He is just mobile enough to kind of get away with it. And the other wings they have on defense, like Jaden McDaniels and Ant, really stay attached in drop coverage. They fight so they never have to get forced into late switches. They really, really stay attached. They're really, when they're locked in, really good at that. Which allows them not to kind of get caught. They'll switch a little, and Rudy Gobert will show at the level every so often. For the most part, they play drop, they stay attached, they've got the personnel to do it. Maybe eventually the Blazers have that. Maybe they do, like with Tumani and Denny. Maybe they're getting there, but they don't have that now. And Clingan's not going to be that. And Cat and Da could not be more different on offense. In January of 2024, Karl-Anthony Towns took 97 3-pointers in 17 games. 97 in 17 games in January. DeAndre Ayton has taken 93s in 358 games. 93s in 6 NBA seasons across 358 games, and Karl-Anthony Towns took 97 in January. They're just not the same. And Karl-Anthony Towns has some off-the-dribble game when they go big with Naz Reid. Naz Reid has great off-the-dribble game. It's like what makes him so special is because he's big, can attack. Like, that works. Here's the thing. Those are examples that even Evan Mobley has a little more off the dribble juice than DA. And again, like that, Cleveland, it maybe doesn't work. It works okay on defense, but maybe it hasn't worked. And I think DA is much more impactful as an offensive player than he is a defensive player, in terms of positive impact. Here's an example though that didn't get brought up in the press conference that I think the Blazers could actually try to emulate. Chicago last season. They played 402 possessions together with Nikola Vucevic and Andre Drummond on the court. Quietly, they started experimenting with 2 big lineups. And who did they do it against? Minnesota and Cleveland, other teams that go big. And those were their most effective games. They won both of those games, I believe both of them in overtime. In certain matchups, This is, Vucevic is a little different from DA. Vuce, over his last 5 seasons, has taken about 5 threes a game, 4.7 by my math over his last 5 seasons. Not a great shooter, but a willing three-point shooter. Willing in volume, more important than accuracy sometimes. And at earlier in his Chicago stint, he had been more accurate than he has been the last 2 seasons. Drummond's not that, right? Like he's like got a little bit of open court transition game to him, but he's just like big, and he punishes you on offense, on the offensive boards. Like he's an all-timer on the glass, all legend in the box score. That's where you'd win. To me, and I think this is the key, is that when you look at the Blazers when they've had pairings with DA and the bigs, and 2 other bigs with Diop and Rob Williams, they've been awful on defense. On defense, awful. The number's awful, but pretty good, intriguingly good on offense. And it's like, oh, it might work. So I think where you win with this pairing is on the glass. You punish teams on the glass. That's how you win. That's how it would work. With Vucevic and Drummond in the game, the Bulls got an absurd 42.9% offensive rebound rate. That means they grabbed 43% of their misses. It's basically half the shots that went up. 43% of their misses they were getting offensive rebounds on. They punished teams on the glass. They finished those 402 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass, with a minus 1.6 net rating. Slightly negative, but killed on offense, 121, and were not good on defense, 122. I think that's the model for the Blazers. A neutral pairing that in the right scenarios really mashes, and otherwise it's like, well, how do they get away with this? Oh, they don't. Get it out of there. Stop experimenting. But I think where you win is not as like an elite defensive team. I think it's on offense. I think you win this by being like, if this is going to work, and I'm skeptical, but if it's going to work, you're going to win on the glass. You're going to win by having 2 7-footers on the court, being physical. Deandre Ayton's a good rebounder. He, like I said, he can still kind of do what he does, and Clingan crushes the glass. The Blazers are a really aggressive offensive rebounding team, to a fault probably, but they're a crash team, and they're a heavy crash team. They crash the glass hard, sometimes with 4 dudes and both dudes from the corners, and nobody runs back on defense. What? But like, I think there's been a revolution over the last maybe 5-6 seasons where teams are like, oh yeah, crashing the glass does have value. You don't have to ignore it like you did maybe in like 2014. But like there's a world in which this works, much like the Vucevic and Drummond thing, in very specific scenarios against the right team. And overall, it's probably a slight negative or it's a neutral pairing, but it can work in small. Like if the Blazers had a 2-man pairing, like in the 2-center pairing that was like basically a neutral on the court, that'd be a huge win. They're not a very good basketball team, so it might not be exactly that. But I think that's the one to think about when you're thinking about this, because that's like 2 guys who aren't super mobile. They're not going to dribble and attack from the 3-point line. Vucevic shot like under 33% from 3. He shot volume, but not particularly accuracy. And he's a good mid-range shooter, much like DA. Like I think that's the one to circle and model. They should try it, without a doubt. They should try it. There's literally no doubt in my mind that they should experiment with this like pretty heavily. They need to look into it. I'm skeptical it can work, but what if I'm wrong? I've been wrong about all types of things in my life. I would love to be wrong about this, and at least we'll get to point back to this and say, hey, remember in like July when Mike was talking about how this wasn't going to work? Well, that's doofus. Yeah, I think they should do it. I don't know how many minutes. Like I don't have a number, but like 250, 300 minutes of them together, and like see if you can see what it looks like. Figure out what like 150, 200 and some possessions of DA and Clingan looks like, and then when it clearly doesn't work, then you can abandon it. No harm lost, and no love lost. I mean, it's like no harm. It's just, and if it works, wahoo! All right, this was a little bit longer of an episode, but that's because I wanted to talk about this a whole bunch. Tell your friends about the program. Come back and do it tomorrow. 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube, free on all platforms. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.